go. This is fantastic. We'll do that some other time. But I wanted to kind of ask, this is the whole point of this, what emotions does it provoke in you?
So it's a very sad song. It's by Beethoven, and he had depression. And it makes me sad too, but in a good way, because it makes me feel for him. Like, so good sadness.
Yeah. And what does it do for you personally, piano in general?
Piano is awesome. It allows me to express my emotions, but specifically inside me, because it allows me to, like a lens, it focuses all my thoughts into one specific point.
That's fantastic. That's awesome.
Hello everybody, thank you so much for joining us again this week. Today we have a very exciting topic to talk about, something that's very near and dear to our heart. As you could see, music is such an important part of our lives. So today we're talking about music and the brain, how music affects the brain. Absolutely,
I think it's been an important part of your life, my kids' life. I'm a musician who struggles for more than 30 years playing guitar. But I enjoy music. I enjoy my own cacophony and noise that I create, and also listening to music. That's part of all human existence. Although we'll talk about some pathologies where that's not the case. But music is an intrinsic part, and has been throughout human history, part of our life. In fact, in many ways, more important and even pre-language. So that's why we wanted to talk about the importance of music in people's lives and what it does throughout their life. But first I wanted to kind of, being neurologists, we want to talk about anatomy, but be assured we're not going to go into too much detail. But it always amazes us, that's why we're into neuro, how a sound wave, a complex sound wave, gets translated into meaning and emotion. How this piece of music or a sound hits the external membrane, and then it moves certain bones, which then moves another membrane, and the second membrane moves a fluid wave, basically. This wave goes through a canal, as they call it, semicircular canal, and then there are nerve endings at different frequencies throughout that system, and depending on the sound and the movement of the fluid, the different nerves are stimulated. Then that gets translated into signal that goes into a nerve, then into the temporal lobe. I'll show you that. This is our little model, and the temporal lobe of the brain, and the auditory cortex, which is in the temporal lobe. And then it gets translated when it goes into different aspects of the brain, from the memory to meaning to even visualizing it. And that's where it becomes complex and the emotions connect.
So basically, there's not one area where music is understood and resides. And it's so interesting because different parts of music, whether it's the tone or the rhythm or the pitch, they're perceived and processed in different parts of the brain.
Correct.
You have the front part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. You have the temporal lobe, which brings in memory and emotions into it. It's the amygdala. It's even the cerebellum, which is, the back part of the brain right here. And that's usually the part of the brain that is responsible for balance and
fine-tuning of movement.
Exactly. So it's so interesting that once this music is perceived in the brain, it goes to the different parts of the brain and it's processed.
Absolutely. One interesting thing is I just recently saw a patient where they had a lesion in the cerebellum. In the past, we thought the only thing that the cerebellum did was balance. So when somebody has a lesion or a stroke or something in the cerebellum, they can't move their hands properly, large movements, or they can't walk. It also affects sound, or even our understanding, or even our emotions for things.
And their voice.
Their voice. So if you haven't noticed so far, up to now, pay attention. Our regular voices have music. We know this when moms talk to children. That's actually exaggerated when we make, moms make, or dads make cooing sounds and some musical sounds. But just regular tone, regular language has what they call vacillations, ups and downs, which is musical. But when somebody has a lesion in the cerebellum, it becomes very, they call scanning. Slow, stopped, one syllable sounds.
Exactly.
Same thing with other parts of the brain that actually affects your ability to understand or even perceive music.
Exactly. It's quite interesting that Oliver Sacks was a famous neurologist. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago. you know, he's written about how the brain perceives music and how, you know, the different pathologies in the brain manifests in, you know, understanding of music and the differences, whether it's lack of understanding of any music or a sudden interest and a sudden talent in music.
Correct.
And one of the cases that was published and talked about was a gentleman who was hit by a lightning, and he had a cardiac arrest, and he had some lesions in his temporal lobes, and, you know, suddenly he had this amazing interest and talent for playing piano.
Correct.
Or, for example, there was this case of a gentleman with Tourette's syndrome where, you know, they have these tics and they have uncontrollable tics, and how that gentleman completely had control over his, you know, tics and his energy by playing drums.
Correct.
And how music actually helped him focus into a specific topic or subject.
And other cases where we see Alzheimer's and frontotemporal dementia, where as the dementia proceeds, all of a sudden you see this amazing artistic capacity manifest, come to surface. And that's remarkable, because all their life it was subdued, and when the inhibition or the stoppage or that part of the brain that stops you from doing things is weakened, all of a sudden the artistic capacity comes to the surface. It's amazing.
Or sometimes when they, in advanced Alzheimer's disease, when they have lost capacity to take care of their activities of daily living, they've lost the capacity to speak, and they're severely affected. Once you play music from the past that they have listened to, whether it was during their childhood or youth, they start singing along with it. They start, you know, being active and associate with that music. And a friend was actually telling us a story about a woman who started singing after months of not even speaking after listening to a song.
Yes. Remember the patient that I saw in one of the rounds where she had Alzheimer's, recently had an infection, so for the last 3 or 4 months she had not spoken. And in rounds with residents, we came to her and I said, we'll call her Miss Collins, that's not her name. I said, Miss Collins, how are you doing? And the residents are, she doesn't talk. I said, find out what she did. So they did the research, they found out she was a piano teacher for 60 years. So I said, Miss Collins, no answer. Of course, the residents were getting a little frustrated because they told me that she doesn't speak. I said, Miss Collins, who's a better composer, Mozart or Beethoven? And then after months of not responding, she turns quietly to me and says, what a stupid question. So that,
I love that story.
Yeah, that was her central island of consciousness. That's another topic we will talk about.
And she associated with everybody and everything around her through music.
Exactly.
When she started listening to pieces from Bach and Beethoven and Mozart on a daily basis, she understood, she found reality again through music.
Absolutely. So music is very important. This is part of our life from childhood, how we perceive things as musical. In fact, how you connect to children better musically. And children that play music, their attention, their focus, their ability to do things are better. The same thing with adults. But at the same time, we want to kind of take away some of the false assumptions that have been, because it's important to be database driven or fact driven.
Exactly.
Some of the things you've heard about is the Mozart effect, which came from 1990s.
Yeah, so it was a research that was done back in the 1990s to really find out whether Mozart effect is true or not, whether you become smarter and more engaged socially if you listen to Mozart.
Yeah.
And when they compared it to different musics in children and in adults later on, they found out that it had nothing to do with Mozart or Beethoven or any of those composers. It actually had to do with the likes and dislikes of the individual, whatever motivated them, whatever emotion was aroused listening to that music. So you could be listening to Guns N' Roses, but if you have some emotional
What have you been listening to lately? Yeah.
But if you have some emotional connection to it, and it motivates you, and it causes, you know, it brings joy to you, that's the music for you.
Absolutely, and it's been shown that children, when they were made to listen to Mozart or some other composer, versus a children's tune that they like.
Yes.
After they listened to the children's tune, they did better in their focus and their tasks.
Absolutely.
So it has to do with what you like, what energizes you, what motivates you, what focuses you. And music has that ability to do that. But it has to be around your likes and dislikes. It doesn't necessarily make you that much smarter, but for the moment, for the task, it gives you greater focus, attention, and capacity to bring all of yourself into it.
As far as objective evidence is concerned, there's really no scientific evidence that music actually enhances or IQ or, you know, structurally changes parts of the brain. But it has always been used as a motivational tool. It's been used for patients with chronic pains, you know, like migraine, or even for patients with cancer or chronic back pain, and it really reduces the perception of pain.
Absolutely.
And for patients with stroke, during their rehabilitation, music has been used to give cues to patients to motivate them to engage in different activities. And for patients with Parkinson's disease, so for those of you who don't know, Parkinson's disease is a movement disorder where people have very difficult time initiating movements, taking a step, or reaching out for something. And music has always been used as a motivating factor for them to walk, the rhythm and the pitch and the tone. So
yeah, the rhythm is critical, absolutely,
Exactly.
in Parkinson's. And in Alzheimer's, although there's no evidence that people do significantly better, but we know that if you start early enough, you build resilience, because music is not like Sudoku, where one little strip of the brain, or I'm exaggerating, is affected. It involves the entirety of the brain. So people who are involved in activities that challenge multiple regions of the brain, plus the emotional, plus the motivational, it has to be beneficial for the brain.
And we've been able to record that using functional MRI imaging. So, you know, functional MRI is an MRI where you can actually see the activity of the brain live.
Yes.
And when people were asked to listen to their favorite music, there were fireworks going on in the brain, you know, all across the brain, left and right involved. And that is a sign that, yes, you know, it does build resilience.
Absolutely. So we think that music is a very important tool. We will have in the future other tools, you know, with virtual reality and everything else. But guess what? Still, when patients come to me, when it comes to cognitive activity, one of the major things I tell them, especially if they have a little bit of a proclivity and tendency towards music, start a musical instrument. Not at a very difficult level, simple level. Now there are tools, there are pianos that light up and you follow them and others. But especially early in life, especially with children, I think music is magical and for the brain. It just focuses. I think Alex said it the best, that it focuses the mind so beautifully, including the emotional component.
Yeah.
So that's one of the segments we wanted to do on music in the brain, because it's not just scientifically sound that should be used. It's fun. It's interesting. Why not? Yeah. So that's what we want to talk about.
Thank you again so much for joining us, and we will come back to you next Monday with another topic. Please follow our Team Shares Eye page on Facebook. Share the videos if you think they're helpful. You can follow us on Twitter as well on Team Shares Eye, and looking forward to seeing you guys again.
Thank you.
Have a good day.